Happy Friday, everybody. I'm Nick Slavic. I'm the host of Ask a Painter Live. It's a weekly live Facebook show where I use my over 2 decades of experience as a craftsman and an entrepreneur to answer any of your questions. We're also brought to you by the PDCA, the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America. My show has now over 3 years of episodes. They've been an underwriter from the start. Thank you so much for the support and sharing this as part of the education content for the largest painters organization in the world. And I'm here today with a bunch of people that I've grown to love very deeply now. These guys are very special to me. We've been doing a lot of projects together. We are at the Titan Wagner World Headquarters here in Minnesota, which is really cool. And more specifically, we're sitting inside the Innovation Center. Just over here, they have full spray booths, everything else over here. We have been messing with some of the finest metallic coatings in the world today. Super impressive stuff. So today's show is going to be all about, we have a very special announcement about something called Painter's Tradecraft today. And obviously, we're in the world headquarters of Titan. Any sprayer question, any technique question, coating question that has to do with sprayers, application, anything, these guys are the experts. They're here for you. So, so thanks everybody for watching here. And we should talk about Titan Painter's Tradecraft.
Right. Well, I'll take that one. Mike Collins, I'm the marketing manager here at Titan. And what we're really working towards with Painter's Tradecraft is engaging experts in the field to talk about different applications for different coatings and the equipment you use for it. And overall, the big idea on Painter's Tradecraft is to elevate, pro paint business practices, trade skills, and craftsmanship. Now, that's not necessarily saying that everything we show is the only way you do a project. It is a way to do the project. Everybody has kind of their special way, the proven tactics, but it's really set up for all levels of painter, from expert to novice, and even for somebody that runs a business. So, I mean, if you've never seen, painting cabinets before, you'll get a good step-by-step on how to use that. Type of rate, or what type of sprayer, what type of coating, all of those things. But if you're a journeyman and you want to add that to your offering, well, here's a good way of getting a foundation for that type of application and being able to quote it for your customer. And then go ahead.
Oh, so Painter's Tradecraft is videos.
Yes.
And we should say first, if everybody wants to go look this up while we're doing this, there's a website for Painter's Tradecraft, right?
Yeah, painterstradecraft.com.
Okay.
Yep.
So people who are watching and are curious about it, you can start looking through that stuff if you want to look at that. So it's basically a super robust educational piece for paint business owners, painters, all that stuff.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you own a business too, it's kind of handy. You may know a lot, but you might hire novices and, hey, go watch this video, go watch that video, and it just gives them the insight that they need to be successful on the job site.
And I was very happy that you had contacted me about this stuff, because not only, obviously craft is of a high concern for me, but also elevating the craft of others too, because, like you said, you have to put out the warning in the painting industry. This is not the only way, because painters are a certain bunch where they think they have a secret, they have it their way, and they'll fight everybody to the death about it their way versus others. And as an industry, we need to open up and realize we all have access to the same equipment, the coatings, QuickBooks, everything else. There's really no secrets.
Right.
It's just your ability to apply those tools and coatings to things. So what I like is elevating the entire industry, which got me very interested in this project. So
yeah, and this is what we have today is the start. I think we'll have roughly 14 videos posted here within the next week. But after that, we'll keep adding to it. Maybe long form, it could be short form. We're talking about doing some frequently asked question videos. So if you have a quick question, we'll show you in video how to do it. How to change a needle nozzle kit on a cap spray.
So I was here and we did a bunch of cabinets, which was super fun to do it in this setting. What other topics are we looking at here for the
Yeah, we actually worked with Chris Berry as well, and he did
the Idaho Painter,
the Idaho Painter. Thank you. And he did a lot of oversight on tips and the different types of tips in the industry. It's kind of a hot topic with the low pressure tips coming into the market. How to use tips, just some 101 stuff as far as getting rid of tails, when a tip's worn out, and then also talked a little bit about inner feed rollers. So, and when that makes sense, it's maybe not for every job. If you're going to do a wall, or if you have the ability to spray, it doesn't work, but there are good times when you would want to use that product as well. So it's kind of that, take a topic, get some good insight, good detail on it, to help you decide whether or not it makes sense for your business, and whether you can pick up a tip for a process you've already done. So there's a lot of different variables that we can kind of build into this. Like I said, today we're here with Crescent Bronze spraying metallics, talking about specifically how to do that, because there's some don'ts. You don't want to use an airless sprayer. It makes the consistency of the paint not very good. You don't get the brilliant finish that you would want if you used a HVLP or cap spray in the Titan sense. So again, it's the whole idea behind this isn't just Titan. It's, here's an HVLP, this is how you spray this coating. Here's an HVLP, this is a good process for it. And by the way, we're using a Titan. So it's kind of open for all audiences at that point.
So which is cool is that, we both sort of mentioned it, but I'm here helping you guys, and Crescent Bronze, who's watching on here too, with a project for metallic finishes, and not only just metallic finishes, but real metal finishes, right? This actually has real metal in it, versus either mica or other stuff too. So yeah, which has been interesting because I've known Crescent Bronze for a number of years. I actually went to the factory in Wisconsin where everything is made years ago for some training on lacquers and lacquer finishing, and I actually got to meet everybody from Crescent Bronze, and I still have, I was telling these guys too, I have that beautiful metallic fold-out brochure in my office because I thought there has to be a client that would go for one of these things too when they're asked for metallic. So I've been wanting to use them for years, and finally we got a chance to play with them today, and super impressive. Yeah. And I've used everything, and this is bar none.
That's nice. Yeah, and I think that's the other piece of it. We see a lot of coatings in the industry. We're talking metallics here, but even on the cabinet painting, we have a segment that just talks about the coatings. And Nick goes over, I think we have about a 3-minute take on the different coatings, your preference, and why one works over the other and what makes sense. So it's the approach is kind of it's an open book. Let's talk about the chemistry, let's talk about what works, what's the right application, and again, just to get that insight on what can make you better on the job site.
I really like the approach that you guys took on the Tradecraft video that I did, because not only did we delve into just enough coating science to make it interesting and like, oh yeah, that's why that happens, but then we talk about all the different ways to put it on. HVLP, air-assisted airless, so it's normally when a painter puts a video online, and I do this too, it's like, here's my favorite sprayer, here's my favorite tip, this is how you do it, and then everybody walks away with, well, I guess that's the only way to do it. But in this, we're like, here's a whole bunch of different kind of coatings. Oil primers, hybrid top coats, 3 different kinds of sprayers. It's kind of a nice sort of all-inclusive approach to it.
Right? And I think that's what I like about the Tradecraft series is it does do that. So my name's Chris Noto. I've been with Titan for 28 years in product development, and what I like is exactly what you said, is that we have multiple tools to do a similar job. And when do you use each tool? Why do you use each tool? That's really what this series is about, and what you did with the cabinet painting videos.
Agreed. Yeah. And it's fun to delve in, especially when you talk about the equipment. I get, as you can imagine, people ask me all the time, like, hey, I'm going to start spraying cabinets. What sprayer should I get? It's like, where do you start? You got 20 minutes? I think we should call instead of this, because I got thoughts. I don't know if they're helpful, but I got thoughts. Yeah. So basically, what's interesting about that whole conversation is when we're doing something with super high-end metallics like today, don't use airless. Or it's not recommended to use airless, because the actual, and you please shout out if I'm saying something wrong, but I mean the actual action of an airless sprayer could deform the little bits of real metal in there, and then you can actually get an inconsistent finish because of that. So super interesting.
You can damage the metal flake in the coating, but you can also hinder the use of the airless sprayer because of how a piston pump works. It's less efficient if you have something like an aggregate inside of it. And so, that's exactly why we use HVLP in this instance, because it's air.
It makes perfect sense. You take a handful of metallic stuff, put it into a sprayer, probably not the best thing for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so no, it was fun. We've been doing, you guys can refresh my memory too, but we sprayed some copper finish, we sprayed some silver finish, we did 2 kinds of gold out there, which are really cool. And how do you describe the first finish we did over the blue wall? What would that be?
Metallic effect specialty pigment.
Yeah, so we did a really cool thing, and I'm sure you guys will see pictures, but it's a blue painted backdrop with a metallic effect applied over the top of it. And it's when we were holding our phones up to it with the light, I mean, it's not just like a shiny, reflective, sort of metallic-y looking finish.
Yeah.
It's alive, it moves and stuff, which is really cool.
Right.
Really cool. So yeah, and we'll wait for any questions that anybody has out there. Now again, we are at the Titan World headquarters. Anything you've ever wanted to ask people about sprayers, techniques, anything else, these guys are the experts, feel free. What do you think is the biggest misconception about either tips, spray equipment, whatever else from professional painters out there?
I think the biggest question, technologies change, and we introduced a new series of tips last year called high efficiency airless tips, and one of the questions that we get, HEA,
Yep.
one of the questions that we get most often is, when do you use HEA versus when do you use a high pressure airless or a standard airless tip versus a fine finishing tip? And we've actually done some videos attempting to answer those questions, but the short answer is, we have specialty tips for fine finishing, and those you would use predominantly if you're doing fine finishing cabinetry, spindles, woodwork, pianos, things of that nature. HEA versus standard airless, SC6 or TR1 or competitive tips, they're used in combination with each other. So the HEA is a production tip for large surfaces. So you would use an HEA 517 where you would use a standard 517. You just lower the pressure so that you're at a working pressure of 1,000 to 1,200 PSI. And there you get longer life, less overspray, better transfer efficiency, so you're actually using less coatings.
Yeah, so basically, the difference between, when you buy a sprayer for the last 20 years, it comes with a handful of 517s.
Yep.
Right. And everybody's rock and roll.
Yep.
And the HEA version of a 517 is just a more efficient
Exactly.
version of that. It's just less over. I mean, the biggest thing when you do a side-by-side comparison, it's amazing because you think, well, it's like a weaker, but then the transfer efficiency is there. If you spray at the same rate with them, you're still getting the same coverage. It's just one's not billowing paint all over the place.
Exactly, and that's exactly how we engineered the tips. Was if you're used to using a 515 or a 517 or a 313, you just buy the HEA version of that exact same tip. You don't have to retrain your hand speed, your distance. All you do is lower the pressure about halfway, and then so the working pressure at the gun is somewhere around 1,000 PSI.
Because you guys know painters well then, because you don't want to rock the boat.
Well, exactly.
Guys will get a brush or a varnish or a thing, and they will cling on to that till that goes away.
You're exactly correct.
And so if you don't have to retrain them on everything,
Yep.
it's way easier for everybody involved, I think.
And that was the tough part of the engineering. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have to retrain the professionals, because they, someone like yourself, you've been in the industry 20 years, you have a process and a technique that works.
Yep.
We didn't want to have to modify that at all. We just wanted to be able to produce another accessory that enabled you to become more efficient and more profitable.
So one of the biggest things, and this shows even somebody who's devoted their life to this, and we're talking deep on coding science back there too. I mean, seriously, nobody's thought more about these topics than I have, and you guys still rock my world with tip knowledge when all these times we've been hanging out. So the biggest difference, and please let me know if we get too into the weeds, but flat tips. I had messed around with them in the past because somebody says, hey Nick, why don't you use a flat tip? I use a flat tip and I say, I don't know, it's fine. It works good, but it's a little bit out of the norm and I'd have to retrain some of my people. I thought there was something special about a flat tip in the way that it works. You guys told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, a flat tip is just not reversible.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that's the only difference.
That's the only difference. Now again, we have
Which is a huge thing.
metering orifice which
Yep.
can go underneath a flat tip,
Mhm.
which converts a flat tip to a fine finishing flat tip, but
And that's
but
the
a,
actual.
just a standard flat tip versus a reversible
Yeah.
tip, they're in essence the exact same thing.
So the
Just
flat
one's
tip
not
is there,
reversible.
it's not reversible, and you can change out the orifice to, I assume, which is bigger or smaller, to then, that's another variable you can mess with to get the finish you want, then,
Yep.
right? Okay.
With the pre-orifice, yep.
So that, I mean, again, you know, when guys always say, oh, use a flat tip, it does this differently, and you think, well, it must just be this completely, it's a zebra versus
Yeah.
a giraffe, and it's like, well, you just can't turn it around.
That's it.
Yeah. So that was like an epiphany.
It's a leopard and a tiger.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, okay, that's, see, context,
Yeah.
perspective, everything snaps into focus.
Right.
If you had to explain the difference between the fine finish tip versus the HEA, how would you best help a paint contractor understand the difference between those two? Besides, obviously, you spray woodwork with one, you spray the outside of a house with another. Is there anything physically that we can talk about differently that would help?
Sure. So, talking about going into the technical details, with a fine finish tip, you are lowering the pressure somewhat,
Mhm.
but you're still spraying it, 1,500 to 2,000 PSI.
Oh, okay.
And the way the fine finish reversible tips are set up is you're atomizing the coating twice, but as it goes through the first orifice and then goes through the second orifice, you're actually getting much smaller particle sizes. So that's how
Versus an HEA.
Versus an HEA.
Oh, okay.
So with the fine finish tip, you're getting a much smaller particle size, which gives you that fine finish. When you do the overlapping, it lays down nicer and then it levels out nicer. An HEA tip, because we didn't want to change the flow,
Mhm.
the particle size is larger. So
Okay.
it's still smaller than a standard airless tip because you're lowering the pressure from 3,000 to 1,000 PSI or
Mhm.
2,500 to 1,000 PSI. So in that instance, yes, the particle size is smaller.
Okay.
Larger, excuse me,
For HEA.
for HEA.
Yep.
But one of the mistakes is people think HEA is also a fine finish tip, and it isn't.
That's what I run into a lot too. And people think, well, yeah, the HEA is just the new version of the fine finish. And
No, yeah.
And although I knew that from using them, you guys actually explaining the difference to me helps a lot.
Yeah,
Really.
our tip is, and feel free to add, our tip is different than our competitors' tip.
Mhm.
So their green tip is a fine finishing, low pressure tip. Our green tip is a substitute for a high pressure airless tip.
Mhm.
Our purple tip, which is the fine finishing tip, that is specifically designed for fine finishing applications.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, we see a lot of people using red tips for fine finishing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you like the finish, that's great, but in the end of the day, we designed our Synergy purple tip to be the fine finish tip.
Yep.
And based on lab and understanding of the coating industry and how we're applying coatings, we made that tip for that specifically.
Yep.
So, it's all about what works for you when you get out in the field and what is gonna work for your customer. But always remember, even with this technical stuff, you can get into it, you get to a website that talks about it, but we have a different tip because it
Yes.
does different things.
And even with somebody who cares deeply about it and I mean, I've done a lot of work over the years, I can't even tell the difference. But the most interesting thing is when you put it in somebody who's worked for me for 3 months, and you let them spray a cabinet door, and that's where you see night and
Sure.
day, versus just a full production tip and then a fine finish tip. I mean, it's night and day.
Yeah.
One of the things the industry has standard on is the numbering system. So when you see a tip with an even number,
Mhm.
it ends with a 12 or it ends with a 10 or a 14, those tips are designed for fine finishing. If it ends in an odd number, 9, 11, 13, 15,
Mhm.
17, and so forth, those are your production tips. So that's an easy way for a contractor to know which tip should be used on which application.
That plus the color of it, hopefully that's double
That plus
proven
the
out, right?
exactly.
So no, that and another great piece of trivia about sprayers and tips. And I would imagine that if you go out and ask 100 paint contractors, even ones who have been doing it 10 or 20 years, tell me about the tip numbers, tell me about what kind of tips, tell me about the tip colors. I don't know that half of them have a great grasp. It's like, I have this one that has these 3 numbers on
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and this is the one I use. and then once in a while I lose that and go buy another one, and that's it. And it's all that I found something that works.
Yep.
Not interested in anything else. So-
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
We should probably talk about sprayers as well. What's interesting to you guys? I mean, what interesting for me is that we're here, Wagner, Titan, and right outside that door over there, you have the museum, the line of old sprayers, some of which I still have for my dad and stuff too. That's
Sure.
cool. So what's kind of interesting for you guys? I got to play with everything. Anything about equipment you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, we're always coming up with new stuff.
Right.
So as you say, we design, us and our competitors, we design reliable, durable. That's always the number one feature of a Titan sprayer.
Yep.
Everything else, everything else we add is to increase the efficiency or the profitability of the customer. So every time we introduce a new version or a new series, that's really what we're attempting to do, is to make the end users more profitable and more efficient. Our MO at Titan is to not add features that don't really have a value, that are just there to jack up the street price. Everything that we attempt to add has some type of a value, hopefully, to the end user. And hopefully you can see that in last year we introduced the Elite Series, which is a gas-powered sprayer, but it's a different technology. Instead of a piston pump, it's a sealed hydraulic pump. The end result is exactly the same. So what you're spraying out the gun is exactly the same, but we were able to do a different pumping technology, which we offer a lifetime warranty. And so this is a different, something different in the U.S. that hasn't been introduced in numbers of years.
We should give it the sort of credit and emphasis it deserves. Like, everybody has a piston pump.
Mhm.
This, it's different, but saying it's different isn't enough. It's completely different.
It's completely different.
Can you even describe for everybody who doesn't understand what the difference is between the piston and the sealed hydraulic?
Sure. So a piston pump has two balls and packings and a piston and in some instances a cylinder, and the piston goes up and down, and that creates the vacuum, and then in turn the pressure that pushes the paint to the gun and then atomizes. With the Elite Series, we've eliminated the piston and the packings. So we're using a sealed hydraulic system or a diaphragm, and the diaphragm is what creates the vacuum to get the paint into the fluid section and then out to the gun. And so because we eliminated the piston and the balls and the packings, we can offer a lifetime warranty because there are no wear parts. So the outlet valve, and it is still a wear part,
Yeah.
but we eliminated the piston and the packings and the cylinder, so we can offer a lifetime warranty on that fluid section.
You guys are very brave offering painters a lifetime warranty.
Absolutely.
You guys have seen pickup trucks driving around with
Yeah,
sprayers just bouncing
absolutely.
around in the back.
Yep.
and
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that obviously a reliable technology then.
Yeah, we believe it. We believe
Yeah,
it.
and it goes back to what Chris said about what we do. We need to be extremely reliable, and it needs to be efficient. And that sprayer specifically starts at reliable and efficient.
Right.
The bells and whistles that you would see on other sprayers, we have electric pressure control, but this is mechanical pressure control. It means literally you pull into the drop site, you drop your siphon tube into a bucket of paint, turn it on, and spray. And that's what this is. No nonsense, lifetime durability, and it performs to the similar or same level or above level than the piston sprayers that are on the market. So it's kind of that, this is the table stakes, this is where the foundation is for all paint sprayers in general.
Because I've been around just long enough, I've sort of been ancillarily aware of sort of what would be considered diaphragm pumps over the years, but they've always been little weird, esoteric kind of sprayers. This is sort of bringing it mainstream, really.
Yeah, actually, so we're a global company, and outside of the U.S., we have been selling sealed hydraulic pumps for over 50 years. And so we finally believe in a technology enough to have it compete with the piston pumps here in the U.S. So if you go into Europe, they have been selling both piston pumps and sealed hydraulic pumps since the 70s. And so,
Wow.
Yeah, both electric powered and gas powered. And so this is the first product that we've, felt that met a little bit more abusive nature of an American painting
yeah,
contractor
the
versus
rugged American painting contractor. Hey, listen, you're speaking my language.
Yep.
Listen, I'm one of them, so don't bite your tongue. I know
Exactly.
what it is. So you've
Exactly.
seen. I mean, I've been on other job sites before too, where you open up the back of a van and there's a big stand-up sprayer just laying on its side back
Absolutely.
there, stuff piled up on top, and that contractor expects to pull that out, plug it in, and just keep going.
Right.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
not like,
absolutely.
ooh, yo, we got to be careful with this. Like, no, it's like a scraper. It's like you throw it in the van, you bring it out when you need it. So
Yeah,
it's-
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Question.
How come there aren't many sizes available in the purple FFLP?
So we have, so I'll answer that question two different ways. So FFLP is actually not us, that's our competitor. Our purple tip is the Synergy tip, but we have similar sizes as to our competitor. So the reason that we don't have a lot of sizes is because we're tailoring that towards fine finishing and fine finishing coatings. So we have, I believe, 10, 12s, and 14s. We may have 1 or 2 8s, but we're gearing those to the more fine finishing coatings. We don't want the end users making the mistake of putting latex paints in those or primers and things of that nature. So that's why we've tailored that series just to that.
When you say 12s and 14, what are you saying?
The orifice. So,
Thank you.
yep. So 8,000's orifice, 12,000, 10,000, 12,000, and 14,000.
And this is the proverbial 310, 312.
Exactly. 310, 410,
Yeah. And if you're,
412.
and it's sort of self-evident if you say, well, why can't I get a 2124 fine finish tip? It's like,
Right.
You'll never need it.
Exactly.
You'll never be a
In
time where
our
you need
opinion,
that.
right?
Yeah,
In our
exactly.
opinion, exactly. Exactly.
And it's if you need a 517 or if you need a 417 or something to spray something, use that. And
Right.
You probably don't need a fine finish tip or something like that.
Typically,
Typically,
right?
yeah.
Typically, you know, if you're trying to put latex paint and you get too much atomization, you have other issues.
Yeah.
So if you're spraying at full pressure and you're over atomizing the coating or doubly atomizing the coatings, you could have other issues. You could have more overspray.
Yep.
You could have dry spray issues. You could have sheen issues.
That's all
So,
of that I've
right,
done.
exactly. And so, you know, with the Synergy series, we've attempted to kind of take that out, take those issues out, and just focus it on the fine finishing portion.
And it depends on what people are fine finishing. Typically, it's clears. I'm still an
Yep.
oil varnish guy, so
Yeah.
typically those are loose.
Sure.
Those are very much more loose than the others, and typically you're dealing with either hybrid or oil enamels, which typically are a little bit looser than the water base too. So
Right.
you can go down. For me, I actually just sprayed a house yesterday with an 8 orifice tip. We were spraying a very loose semi-solid stain, and typically which is funny because I use the same tip size as I would to varnish interior woodwork,
Right.
as the numbers, just not the fine finish version, to paint the outside of a house as varnish on the inside trim, because arguably the stain that I was applying was even looser than varnish, and we sprayed an entire 3,700 square foot house in 5.5 hours. So you can't say, oh, that's just a delicate tip. It's like, not in the right hands, it's not.
Did you change the pressure compared to what you would do?
Way down.
Way down.
Way down.
And plus, it was Minnesota was 90 something degrees yesterday, so.
We're boogieing.
Yeah.
So no, it's and we should. Was there another question? I got another topic for. Okay, so.
But to answer, you definitely, you can use the 8, or if you don't want to doubly atomize the coating, you could use a 308, I'm assuming, or a
Yeah,
408.
exactly.
You could use a 409.
Yep.
And the difference between that is the 08 has the double orifice,
Mhm.
so you're doubly atomizing the coating, and the 9 only has the single orifice.
Yep.
So you're only, and so you need more pressure, a little bit more pressure,
Mhm.
but it would do an equivalent but a slightly different job as well.
Absolutely. Because I'm a nerd about this kind of stuff, and I know we've spoken about this before, the TR2, I call
Yeah.
them switch tips. These are, can we still get, okay, so Titan makes something insanely cool, which is, I'm going to use my own parlance, you guys fill in with the right way to do it. I call them switch tips, because it's got a pencil tip and a fan tip like this, and you can basically, it's one tip that you oscillate, and it's still a reversible tip. So it's just like your standard airless tip where you can reverse it, but it's just got another one, and one's a pencil tip and one's a fan. And I was introduced to it probably 10 years ago, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, because I was doing drywall ceilings and it had the expanded metal joist where you're doing deck, the metal
Mhm.
deck, but you're also doing these rebar joists.
Right.
And I just felt like taking a 517 up there and just, making a cloud of drywall
Right.
wasn't great. So my Sherwin-Williams rep said, hey, there's this really cool thing that's got a pencil tip and it's got the fan, and I just fell in love. And I have my nice collection of them. I try to be delicate with them, but your guys' knowledge of the TR2 tip, I'm a lover.
Yeah. So as Nick mentioned, basically there's a tip with a wide pattern and a larger orifice, so higher flow. And then when you just turn it 90 degrees,
yep.
you have a narrower fan pattern and a narrower orifice. And the way that we design these tips, and one of the reasons Nick likes them so much, is that, again, we're not trying to re-educate painters and their technique. So when you're doing wide fan pattern jobs, walls or buildings, or like you said, the body of a deck, you're moving at a hand speed that you're normally going at. But we also, when you twist it 90 degrees, it lowers the fan, but also lowers the orifice. So now when you're doing the spindles or the handrails, or if you're cutting around doors and windows, you have much more control, but you have exactly the same mill thickness. So you don't have to change your hand speed, you don't have to change your distance from the surface. And that's really exactly what they were designed for. So we still have a few sizes left, the big popular sizes we still have left. But we found 310, 517, and 515, I think.
310 is
311, but yeah.
Oh, 311.
Right,
Sorry,
because
yeah,
it's not
there's like in the sprayer tip Hall of Fame. I mean, I would put 311 up there with any. It's such a great fan pattern, such a great pencil tip
Yeah.
pattern, and it's just like one of the most versatile. I've sprayed outsides of houses, I've sprayed cabinets, I've sprayed everything. I probably sprayed more cabinets in my life with that
Sure.
single tip, and it's just a phenomenal thing.
We do, for those of you that line stripe out there, we also have a line striper version
Yes.
of it as well for stenciling, and then doing a bigger, blue for handicap if you want to do that type of stuff as well.
Which is really cool because I kind of keep those tips special for
Yep.
I don't throw those out in the crew van. So I actually have one of the yellow ones that I came across with a promotion years ago, and it's fun to take out and just play with. I also have the fine finish version of
Exactly,
those, the purple
yep.
ones too, which is all like a rare little thing that you have. Like nobody else has one of those things. And it's
Yeah,
such
exactly.
But God, they're so effective, and you guys made it really dummy proof. Because most painters don't understand what 311 means anyway.
Right.
And then when you put in two and they're different orifices, like you can look on the technical data sheets and the things, and you can see their different orifices, which complicates things.
Which complicates things.
But you guys were nice enough to do two really cool things. You just put 311 on it, and then on the two different versions, you actually have like a pencil tip,
Mhm.
and then you have a little plastic fan tip on one end too. So all you do is look down at it and select it, and it's again just a super cool, very interesting, unique sort of thing that I'm a huge lover of. I've been screaming about it for 10 years, and it's just, the guys.
Now with social media, we might have to reintroduce it again.
It's such an interesting thing, and there's a lot of things in the industry where everybody does it one way, and I do things another way, and I'm always open to the fact that I might be completely wrong and missing something.
Mhm.
This is not one of them.
Right.
And I'm the one here sitting like, I don't know whether to like extol the virtues of them so that I can never find them anymore because they're all sold out, or if you keep this secret to yourself, but it's just like, it's such a good thing, and the painters who really know have them. You know, it's almost like a sign of, you've been down the tip rabbit hole. You've
Right,
explored
exactly.
everything. You've done, so anyway.
And again, like everything, like we were talking about, with finishing a cabinet, we have 3 different ways of finishing a cabinet. This 2-speed tip isn't an everyday application use.
Right.
If you're doing the outside of a house and you have a lot of cutting in, that's when you would use it. But if you're doing a big, commercial
Pole shed,
building
yeah.
or a pole shed
Yeah.
that has no windows and no doors, use your standard
Don't
airless
waste
tip.
that
Don't
beautiful
waste
CR2,
Don't
yeah.
waste it. Exactly. So if you're doing a fence, that's not what it's for. If you're doing a picket fence, okay, maybe it's a little better. If you're doing a deck, it's absolutely perfect.
So there's, in other words, there's the right tip technology for the right application.
Right.
And for the right person, because
Yeah.
of all the variables to mess with, the coating, the sprayer itself, the pressure, the tip. I mean, you start there's so many variables, and to sort of mess with the biggest variable, which is the paint business owner, what works for me may be horrible for another contractor. So it's nice to know that there's any of those things available to people out there.
And as you mentioned, we've attempted to simplify that. So,
Yeah.
A 517 red tip is the same hand speed, same technique, same distance as a 517 green tip, as a 517, other version. So we've tried to take all that out so that we don't have to retrain painters and of course we want perfect surfaces.
Yeah.
So we don't want a job to look bad because of something that we produced.
Yeah, I like that. And once the hardest part is to get painters to try something a little new, because we have a deliverable that we give to our clients.
Yep.
And the second, even if somebody says this is cheaper and better, you're still like, yeah, but this is a given,
Yep.
and that's not a given. So the hurdle is getting painters to try it. Once they try it, that's the given.
Yeah,
Like it's
exactly.
it's not gonna surprise them. If anything, it'll surprise them in how much better it is
Right.
that you're going through less coatings and all this other stuff on these houses. So yeah, it's a
Yeah, and I
wonderful
think,
thing.
that ties right into, shows like this, being able to post things on Facebook and Instagram. Contractors can see things being
Mhm.
used. Whereas, 3-4 years ago, you didn't see much of this at all. And it was